All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the City of Mount Vernon City Council study session for October 21st, 2020 to order. The time is now 6 o'clock. Item 8 tonight is our Development Services Committee update. So I'm going to toss that over to Chris Phillips, our Development Services Department Director. Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council and citizens. This is going to be a short update for you today, and it is all going to be done by Mrs. Rebecca Lowell. So 3 topics for you, then we're going to pass one over to the Mayor, and then we'll jump into the finance business.
All right, so can everyone see my screen? Perfect, thank you. Someday I'll get over having to ask that every time it comes up. But the items that were on your agenda this evening, and actually maybe I should stop if you guys want to do your approval of minutes. Or we could do it later.
We'll just do it after your update.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So I'm going to start with a brief review of the 3 different sets of code amendments that will be before council in the next few months. I'm going to touch on some comprehensive plan amendment procedures, and then we'll be the mayor will have a county homeless shelter, and then back to me for a commercial and residential project update. So the first of the 3 code amendments that I wanted to briefly review with council, keeping in mind I know you've seen these a number of times, but the first one is for the emergency weather shelters that will be codified in Mount Vernon Municipal Code, Chapter 8.50. And I just put a handful of bullet points here just as a general overview of what this ordinance entails. So as you'll recall, the mayor with this ordinance declares a severe weather event, and those types of events are spelled out in detail as to when it's a severe weather event or not. And this ordinance diverges slightly from a few of our other sets of regulations because these types of shelters can be opened by a religious establishment, a fraternal organization, a public agency, or other entity. So a few of the other code amendments we've discussed more recently, they have to be hosted or run by a religious organization. This ordinance is a little bit different than that. Those who wish to open this type of a shelter need to make a request to the city, and really what they need to do is to demonstrate that the basic life safety requirements can be met. And there is an appendix to this ordinance that gives examples of how these life safety could be met. In a perfect scenario, and as we all know, nothing is ever perfect, we would have a shelter opening up in a commercial building that's fully sprinklered and has a commercial fire alarm. We have yet to have that happen. So what we end up doing is really looking at some of these buildings, and our fire department and our building official go through these buildings to figure out what does need to be done, what are the minimum requirements so that we can ensure that it's safe for occupants to be in there. But there are things like fire watches and other modified requirements that allow these types of facilities to open. From a procedural standpoint, the building official issues a temporary use permit to allow the building to be occupied. There is no permit fee for this. The ordinance does specify that the shelter needs to be closed 2 days after the ending of the severe weather event. And the last time that council saw this, you adopted Ordinance 3811 in September of this year. So if anyone had any questions about that, this is one of the 3 code amendments that will be back before council, hopefully for adoption at your first regular meeting date in December, which I believe is December 9th. Sorry, I put that on a slide, to another slide that'll be coming up here in a minute, but I'm pretty sure that's the date.
And just as a reminder, Rebecca, for council, was the last time that the mayor put this emergency weather shelter in play, it was the senior center that was
Correct.
utilized for about I think it was about a week, and weather being very cold at that particular time. So just refresh your memory.
Exactly. So moving on, unless there were any other questions on this one, the second set of code amendments has to do with the temporary homeless encampments, and more specifically, the safe parking. As you're aware, we already have a chapter of our municipal code that's in chapter 17-10 that deals with temporary homeless encampments. This is an addition to this chapter that deals only with safe parking. So we're not amending any portions of the code that have to do that are in place right now with the temporary homeless encampments, except to add this new subsection, which would be subsection 070, that specifically allows safe parking. And again, just to give you a reminder, because I know that we have a handful of these types of regulations, it can get confusing. This set of regulation does have to be on property that's either owned or controlled by a religious organization. It would allow one vehicle per 10 existing parking spaces, and that is something new to the council. We had the previous the ordinance that you adopted previous to Ordinance 3812 that you saw in September actually had, I believe it was a maximum of 5 cars. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it was. This has been changed because there was a new state law enacted. And this is what it specifies in there is the one vehicle per 10 existing parking spaces. So after working with Kevin and reading that new legislation, this ordinance is modeled exactly after what we can do per the state statute now. This will still require, this was in the previous ordinance, a restroom, and that can be either indoor, outdoor, hand washing, and trash facilities. It has a 6-month maximum, which is also straight out of the state law. However, if council would like to have some additional flexibility built in there to allow it to go longer, which is what you had adopted previously, if there had been no complaints that it could continue, you could do that as well. I just went ahead and I wasn't sure for the interim regulations what you wanted to do. So to be safe, this is what's in there right now. But again, this is one of the ordinances that will be back before you fairly soon. So if you, that would be one of the items, if you want to think about that and allow that to be extended. No issue with staff, we just need to know that. For this type of a permit, there actually is not a permit. It's just a notification to the city. What the applicant is required to do is to give notice to the neighbors, give notice to the city. If there is a public hearing that's held, the city is required to, the notice that we give is very similar to what we would do for what they call a special meeting, where we put it in the newspaper and we advertise for it. But I did in the interim ordinance also acknowledge that it's very difficult for people shouldn't be having public hearings or having very limited public hearings right now. So there was some exemptions in there, recognizing that in this COVID-19 circumstance, that there may be other things that an applicant needs to do. If they want to send out letters to the neighbors, notify them in other ways so that they can let them know what's going on. We left it open just to make sure that I was hoping that maybe somebody would be more creative maybe than I would. But if they're getting notice to the neighbors, however they're doing that, that's really what that's intended to do. And again, this was one of the ordinances that you saw in September with, it was Ordinance 3812.
So I had a question for Rebecca. Sure. Do we have any limit on the number of people that can be in one of those vehicles?
We don't. Well, I should say there's not a limit that is specifically referenced in the ordinance. However, all of these ordinances are based on life safety. I don't know exactly how you would quantify an occupancy, but I'm sure we're not the first people who would have to try to figure that out to make sure that it was safe.
So that actually leads me to my next question. The next question was the restroom requirements, either indoor or outdoor. If we have a space with, say, 100 parking spots, they could put 10 vehicles in there, say 2 people per vehicle. That's 20 people. I think we need to kind of factor in some kind of a number that one bathroom probably won't service 20 people. So, I mean, I've got 3 people in my home, and 2 bathrooms sometimes doesn't service us. So, I'm just concerned that we'd have 1 bathroom and 20 people trying to use that. So I think there's something maybe we should be able to do on that, just
Sure.
to make sure that
Yep.
the sanitation side of things are taken care of.
No, I think that's a great point, and I don't see why we couldn't apply the same type of factors that we would for a commercial building permit. There's items in the building code that we look at to make sure that we've got enough facilities for the occupancy of different areas. So we could definitely do that.
I'd definitely like to see something like that.
Okay, perfect.
Other feedback from council that you'd like Rebecca to take a look at? Okay.
All right.
If something comes to mind, please give her a call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give Chris a call.
So this next slide was just a handout. 99% of this information has been on our website for quite some time, but after the hearings that we had in September with those interim ordinances, I just reformatted it just a little bit. I don't know, hoping that maybe somebody else might pick it up and read it again. So I just noted here that this handout is on our website. And really the main reason I wanted to show it to City Council, and the reason I just updated it was some of the public comments that we had received that evening, and just things I hear in general really leads me to believe that there's a lot of confusion with regard to how the city regulates these types of facilities, and a real misperception about sometimes we get comments that make me think that people don't understand that we allow permanent shelters, and we have for decades in our code. The issue that we run into is that most of the places that folks want to house our homeless don't have current life safety facilities in them. By that, I mean our fire sprinkler systems, our commercial alarms, those types of items. So I think this hopefully could maybe clear some of that up. But maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part. But anyway, so it just goes through the permanent shelters that we allow, the fact that we already have our temporary cold weather shelters. That's been on the books for several years now. And then we have our 2 new, the safe parking and our emergency weather shelters is really just what this handout is telling us. And then the last code amendment that will be back before City Council, hopefully in early December, is the permit timeline extensions due to the COVID-19. Those were a handful of different amendments to Chapter 1405. And in short, what that allowed was a 75-day extension of time for all permits. With this item in particular, I think there'd been a question about a short plat and whether or not they were going to meet their timeline, and they did. I think we had 4 days to spare even. There were some emails I think went out to council, I don't know, probably about a month ago on that. That was the one big project that really needed to have this ordinance adopted to make sure that they didn't lose the very significant investment that they'd made in that property. And that project was buttoned up. They met their timelines and no issues with that. So if there weren't any questions, I can move on to the next agenda item. Maybe I should wait a minute. Sorry, I'm used to being able to see everyone.
Any questions for Rebecca before we move on?
You know, I did have one question going back to the shelters.
Yes.
You know, you said that most people don't have the life-saving capacity as far as sprinklers and that. So the Skagit Senior Center, they're not equipped with any of that for the
No,
seniors that
sir.
are in there? Wow.
Exactly. Nope.
Yeah, that's a good way to treat our seniors. Yeah, so there's nothing in there at all? Or they're just grandfathered
No
in with the
sprinkler
building?
systems. And I believe I'd have to,
I think
Chris
they
might
have,
to help me
yeah.
out here. I don't know. I don't think they had the right type of a alarm system either. I think they kind of had a scaled down version.
Yeah, it's a
So they did
patchwork
have to
alarm they
implement a
had.
fire watch.
Yes. So patchwork alarm system, and then the second thing was the size of the doors. To be able to exit the building were not too standard either. Both of those were were waiverable due to the hardship piece to it, and then also the fire watch, as Rebecca alluded to. So once the fire watch was in there, which they had done up at the other Seventh-day Adventist shelter, similar procedures for that. So all was good for that temporary period. No issue.
Okay.
It's excellent reason to have a new library community center, right? For our seniors. All right. Couldn't let that one pass. Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
Thank you, Mayor. So the next item I just wanted to touch on is with the 3 code amendments that will be back before council in December. We also have our 2 comprehensive plan amendment requests. As you'll recall, several months ago, you docketed both of those. One was for the Woodmancies on Summer Sun subdivision, so north of College Way, east of Martin. They were asking for a portion of a site to be redesignated from public to multifamily. And then we had another request from the Craig Kamek for a piece of property at the southeast corner of, oh goodness, I'm thinking Division and 18th. I could have that wrong. I'm sorry. I should have pulled up a map. But at any rate, it's another piece of property that you'll be having hearings on for that as well. And just always as kind of a goes hand in hand with my brief little spiel last week with regard to when we provide additional discussion to City Council beforehand and when we don't. Those comp plan amendments fall squarely into the policy realm. So that's the 3670A, and those are items that's why you have to docket them. But that also means that we also have to consider them concurrently, which is why we always have those hearings together at one time. And so, and here's my slide that had the dates on it. So the code amendments and the 2 comprehensive plan amendment requests will both be before Planning Commission on November 17th. And then I did allow a little time in case Planning Commission isn't able to make a recommendation that night. They could, the following 2 Tuesdays from then, I think, which is December 1st, I believe, they could continue that hearing, which would mean that City Council would have it, all items, the code amendments and the comprehensive plan amendment requests on December 9th. And that was all I had, unless there was any other questions for now.
Any questions for Rebecca? Okay. Moving on. Rebecca, can you put the slide up of the topics? Because I apologize. I thought that we had
no.
that like kind of a listing in our agenda. So I want to make sure
Oops,
I'm
one too far.
covering everything that we need to cover. Do you want to go ahead and do your commercial and residential project update, and then we'll just
Sure. Perfect.
that
Yep.
way we'll kind of get you done. So
Thank you.
thanks. Sorry.
All right. So, um, we always like to give council just there's really no rhyme or reason when I do these updates. I just go through a list and just pick a handful that I think council might find interesting. Maybe not. If not, sorry. Sometimes I do like ones that you may not have heard about. Of course, I'm sure everyone has seen the new 7-Eleven on Kincaid, which actually has its site address is off of 5th Street. That new street that they're building there will be 5th Street, and they'll actually have a street address at 805. It is, if you haven't been by, they're actively under construction, which is exciting to see. You can also see the public trail that's there next to the railroad tracks. So that's great to see them under construction. Just this week, we received an application where the Denny's on College Way is staying. It's going to stay a Denny's, but they are going to be doing a TI, a tenant improvement to a portion of their building to include a Papa John's. I thought that was a interesting mix of the two businesses. We are reviewing a different tenant improvement on Cedardale Road that will allow for the Mount Vernon School District to have an alternative high school located in one of the commercial buildings. Again, it's on Cedardale and it's just south of Anderson Road near Dimensional Communications. We've got the two different multifamily housing projects. One is for our permanent supported housing facility at 1925 East College Way. That project is moving right along. As you're aware, this project had to go through a federal environmental review called a NEPA review. They did that last year, and so now I'm just finishing up with their SEPA review. So we went from the federal to the state, and I believe the appeal period on their SEPA is either tomorrow or maybe next Monday. So they've just about got that wrapped up, and we are actively looking at their building permit and working with them on design review. So that project is moving right along, which is exciting. We've also have applications from the Housing Authority for a multifamily project at 4100 East College Way. Interesting that we've got two of them that are somewhat similar, both on different locations on East College Way. That project is currently, portions of that were put on hold last week pending the submittal of some additional information from the applicant. The applicant had submitted information to us documenting various chemicals and other environmental contaminants without giving us the mitigation for that, or really telling us the full extent of what's going on there. So we gave them an option of we could put the project on hold and they could submit that information to us, which is what they've chosen to do. Or the option that was provided to them was, or we could go through a full-blown environmental impact statement, which would be the other way that we would ascertain that information. But it's good that they, sounds like they hopefully have some of that information, and we'll be working through those issues with them. And then last but not least, the grocery outlet that's on Riverside Drive is planning to move to 525 East College, which is the old Value Village 24-hour fitness end of that multi-tenant facility there. So we've been working with the property owners on that one as well.
Okay, any questions for Rebecca? And just a reminder for council, you can always go on the city website. Rebecca, you're going to have to correct me if I do this wrong. So mountvernon.gov, if you go under departments to development services, there's always a section that says news and notices. And so that's where the project files are put out to the public, that you can click on there and look at applications and stuff like that. I think it's always kind of interesting. I forget about it sometimes myself. But you can find even drawings that have submitted to take a look at, and our public can take a look at all that too. So, okay.
Yeah, so I just pulled that up here. So this is
Thank
what we always have. So here's all of our 2020, and you can get more information on here. And actually, I don't have to do it tonight if we don't have time, but at some point I could also show council how you could get the same information off of our permit portal.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you see our pink land use signs, maybe you don't know who the applicant is or the address is, I can show you how to get onto our permit portal and click around on the map too and get some of this information.
Yeah.
But it's great for us. It really, I think, increases the transparency, and folks can dig in as much or as little as they want into all the technical reports and documents that we get.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions for Rebecca? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Since we do a little bit of different format, I'll go ahead and call for the approval of the September 16, 2020 Development Services Committee minutes.
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, motion by Mary and a second by Gary. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you so much. I wanted to just give council just a quick update. Today, we had another meeting of the mayors, Lisa Janicki and Public Health, just trying to roundtable the idea of emergency shelter. We hadn't met for several months, and so we were called together again today. So we met from 9:30 to noon. And Public Health presented some really great research. We had asked them to take a look into different types of models of emergency shelter. And so they brought forth that information. They also brought forth a chart that I'm going to show a few of the slides. They just sent them over this afternoon, and I will forward the entire PowerPoint to all of our council members. And I don't want to pretend like I'm speaking for the county with their slides, but I wanted to share just a couple of the graphics that you might find really interesting, and to draw your attention to. So sorry, Leah wants to give me a kiss here. So trying to share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to go up to this slide. This is something that I think is so interesting for the county to put together, because it feels like over the years, we know there's lots and lots of work going on, but it's kind of hard to see it all in one swoop. And so this is one of the slides you're going to see around strategies to end homelessness, and it's really a continuum. I think we would all, just like in our police, how we address crime, is we'd rather prevent it in the first place. And so on the left, you're going to see we'd like to try and prevent homelessness. We want to assist in homelessness, and then we want to, of course, solve homelessness. And so they kind of laid out, just so we could see just how the entire continuum is and how we should be working on as a county and as mayors, cities, and the county together on filling all of the continuum in some fashion. So when they had us take a look at that, they showed us the current, and it's all really small, I know, I apologize, how they kind of currently address those things. So you're going to see this slide. So just as an example, under emergency shelters at the very top, there's the youth shelter, Oasis Teen Shelter, there's the Anacortes Family Center and Family Development Center. Skagit Domestic Violence has a shelter. There's a motel voucher program right now as a winter shelter, and who that's through, the farm workers through Housing Authority, and then permit single adult shelter is missing. So there's a question mark. So as you go through the slide, you'll sort of see how they've plugged this in just a really comprehensive way to illustrate like where we're at and where the gaps could be. And so as a group, we felt that it is the most meaningful to decide where are the gaps. We don't want to necessarily duplicate. We want to make sure we're getting the most bang for any investment that the city is going to be making. So those are a couple of the slides you're going to see. The other thing that we discussed was how do behavioral health services fit in. And again, there's continuums here, and sort of how do we know as a community where the gaps are in behavioral health services, because we know there are significant gaps. And so at some point, I'll definitely have our county public health come in and do a comprehensive presentation and talk to you from the experts' perspective. But I just wanted to give you a flavor of some of the conversations that we're wanting to have as we work together towards some type of shelter solution. They also present, and here again, they put in some of the programs that we already do. Sorry, I'm trying to click on those little things. They also presented some data from the Washington Department of Commerce. This is statewide data on the different models and types of shelters and what seems to be the most effective through data and proving that. So continuous stay and enhanced shelters, they say, are significantly more successful than just the night-by-night drop-in shelters. So for example, a continuous stay or enhanced shelters where they would have services involved, there may be not necessarily a timeline. You could stay more than a week. You could stay more than a few months. The night-by-night shelters is, I think, what folks maybe kind of have a stereotypical in their mind where they open a gym, folks come in, they have to line up, it's just a drop-in and there's really nothing else besides a shelter or maybe a cot and maybe some food. The data is showing that continuous stay shelters exit people to permanent housing about 50% of the time. And night by night or drop-in shelters exit people. I can't read this, sorry. To the street, jail, or unknown destination 75% of the time. So what they're saying is when you have continuous stay and you've got services, they're able to try and exit people into permanent housing. Whereas if you have the drop-in people are really just kind of turned out onto the street, unknown destinations, there's no tracking, and perhaps even simply jail as they're turned out from the shelter in the morning. 5 key effective keys to effective emergency shelter. Housing first approach. That's where you've got to lower barriers to get people just in before you're trying to help solve all the other issues that they're bringing to the table. Safe and appropriate diversion. Immediate and low barrier access. Housing focused rapid exit services, and data to measure performance. And again, I'm not professing, I'm just wanting to illustrate some of the topics that we're being presented with from Skagit County Public Health. Some of the key findings that they're seeing is that non-congregate shelters limit the spread of COVID. So non-congregate means that there is space in between, or there's their own specific spaces. So say a hotel room would be an example of a non-congregate shelter. A congregate shelter would be the gym with a bunch of cots in it. Also that the non-congregate or in the enhanced shelters, that was services, have all these other benefits. Folks feel more stable. They have a better health and well-being, reduced interpersonal conflict, decreased 911 calls, et cetera. So you can see, and on the slides as you go through, you'll see some of these key findings. This was really fascinating. I wanted to specifically show you this, that the difference from one particular shelter and the calls for 911. So you could see how they've dropped, and that was when they de-intensification. That's when they when COVID happened and they started giving folks more space, whether it was their own particular room, and how the 911 calls dropped. And so the county public health department is able to really present a lot of data around what models for emergency shelter are really working. And then this is just the last slide I thought I'd share with folks that are in hotels that are considered like a decentralized or a non-congregate shelter. They have maybe some room and a little more safety and security, and some of the exits into permanent housing from those locations. So just an example, there's no decisions made in this particular group at the moment. Commissioner Janicki really wanted everyone's minds around the table, and we wanted to learn first before we really start some specific solutions. The next meeting, we've asked for the county to look into House Bill 1580, 1590. I don't know why it gets stuck in my head, but the possibility of a sales tax for housing and how that could be invested in an emergency shelters model. So just again, a lot of conversation. I will forward you the slides today, and then certainly give me a call, or even more importantly, give maybe Jennifer Johnson or Sarah Hinman, the experts in the field, a call at the county if you'd like some more information. So any questions about that? Okay, great. Thank you. Lots of really good engagement, I have to say, and people really wanting to move on a solution so we can have some space there as quickly as possible. Item B tonight is the Public Benefit Agreement Addendum with Visconsi, and Chris Phillips, Development Services Director, is here to present this item. Chris.
Hi, thank you, Mayor, Council. Let me share my screen just real quick, just to refresh everybody's memory. And can everybody see that? Okay. So the PBA addendum before you tonight does not alter the requirement for Visconsi to install landscaping throughout the lots to be developed. They will still do that. However, it does allow or permit Visconsi to phase the installation of required landscaping to coincide with the completion of construction. As per the original PBA, Visconsi will follow all the rules and regulations that were required for landscaping guidelines and submit required landscaping maintenance financial security forms as they were before. What I have here on the screen is just, you can see the construction that is happening now, where the red portion is up there that says additional improvements. This agreement would allow Visconsi until October 31st of 2021 to install the appropriate landscaping and agreed upon information in the original PBA there. And then on the additional improvements that is part of the green box located down below, this would be for the future project, and this would go until October 31st, 2022. And pending any of your questions, I am here to answer.
Any questions for Chris on this?
So there's a financial security that they're going to put up to ensure that this is done, correct?
Oh, yes, yes. So on both sides of it, they'll make sure that one, it is completed as per the addendum, and then after it's been installed, much like we do with other developments, there'll be a financial security associated with it to make sure that what they plant actually lives.
Okay. It only makes sense that you would put the landscape in after the development was done rather than running over the landscape. So I would make a motion that council approve the PBA amendment with Visconsi.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mark and a second by Mary. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks so much. All right, main event. So item C tonight is the review of our 2021 preliminary budget. So Doug, our finance director, is here to walk us through. I think he has a presentation on hotel motel, if I'm right, and then we hope that we'll have some good dialogue with our council members. So I'll turn it over to Doug.
All right, thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm assuming you guys can see my screen, right? Okay. So tonight, just a couple of things I just wanted to go over. First of all, we always talk about, start with, excuse me, let me go backwards here. Our budget calendar. So tonight what we're doing is just, we're just holding another work session to review the preliminary budget. And basically what I want to talk about tonight is a lodging tax. Talk about the recommendations that the LTAC, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee brought forward. And then next week, we have a public hearing on the 2021 revenue sources, and then just more discussions on that night, and also on November 4th. We're planning on getting the preliminary budget made out to the public on November 2nd. And then really on November 12th, I don't have anything, and that's actually a council, regular council meeting. And then we'll hold a public hearing on the 2021 budget and hopefully adopt the budget on November 18th. One of the things I would like to just bring up and discuss, if council would be agreeable or not, or if we want to discuss that, is to actually move that public hearing and budget adoption to the 12th, since that's a regular council meeting, which I think would probably be better to adopt the budget on a regular council meeting instead of a study session. But I will leave that up to your guys' direction.
So for me, I agree with you, Doug. I think it would be great to do it during a regular council meeting. This budget is pretty lean and mean, and there's not a lot of battles to be had in this budget. And if we want to do it during a regular council meeting, I think the 12th would be just fine.
All right. Well, then we will get the public hearing, or excuse me, the notice out. We have to get it to the press on Friday, so I will go ahead and do that if everybody else agrees. And we'll plan it for that.
If we're not done on the 12th, having the hearing that night, of course, if there's further discussion or work necessary, we could push it to the 18th, worst case scenario. Is that correct?
We would still hold the public hearing on the 21st, but yeah, you wouldn't have, you could adopt the budget later if you wanted to.
Right, we have that flexibility. I'm not suggesting we would. I just think that that's risk averse, so it's fine.
Yeah, anytime we have an issue like that, we can always table it to the next meeting if we have to have further discussion. It's just parliamentary procedure.
I would just like to confirm the date. November 12th is a Thursday.
November 12th is a Thursday because the 11th Wednesday is Veterans Day. So by statute, we move the day after. So okay. Yeah, thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
I should have brought that up. So yeah, it would be on Thursday, November 12th.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So like I said earlier tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about reviewing the lodging tax, tourism promotion funding. This is part of the budget for the 21 budget that council will consider, and this is just when you approve the budget, this will be approved with it unless there's any issues or concerns with that. So just a little reminder that funding for this program does come from the Tourism Promotion Fund, which receives hotel motel taxes from lodging establishments inside the city limits, and the city collects 4% tax on charges for overnight lodging. Lodging tax can be used for tourism marketing and operations of special events and festivals designated to attract tourists, operations and tourism-related facility owned or operated by nonprofit organizations, and operations and capital expenditures of tourism-related facilities owned by the city of Mount Vernon. And the 2021 funding program is open to organizations with the demonstrated ability to achieve tourism goals. Moving on, so this fall, the city did go out and we put out an application process requesting funding requests, and the funding program and special awards were dependent on recommendations of the city's LTAC, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. The LTAC did review all the applications and recommended a list of candidates and funding levels that will be part of the 2021 budget that I'll discuss tonight, and will be for the City Council's final determination. Funds will be awarded on a competitive basis, and applicants will be notified following City Council's decision. The Lodging Tax Advisory Committee this year consisted of Roger Gietzen, who's the director of the Lincoln Theater Center Foundation, Kristen Keltz, who's from the Hotel Services Group, Karen Edgerdahl from the Best Western Plus, and Cindy Verge, the executive director for Skagit Valley Tulip Festival. I also wanted to tell everybody that reminder that all the budget presentations, if you go out into the director's iDrive and go to budgets 2021, you'll find all these presentations in there. I also put a copy of this presentation though in your packet for tonight, but also we have this document that it's 151 pages that lists the application process, and all of the actual applications are in there with all the write-ups from all of them. So that's in there if you guys want to see more detail of what was requested and asked for. I just wanted to let you know that that's there for you, but we won't go through all of that tonight. So any questions before I start? All right, then I will move on. So starting on the top there, that the Skagit Valley Tulip Festival, they did request $12,000 for the 2021 festival brochure and operating expenses to support the marketing, and LTAC did decide to fully fund it, and the recommendation. I wanted to, before I started this, I wanted to remind everybody that this year things have been kind of lean because of COVID from our lodging tax collection. So our numbers are down, and we predicted that they'll be down in 2021 also. We had about over $407,000 in requests this year, and we were only able to reward just under $270,000. So, and that's using, I'll show you at the end of this, those numbers again. A lot of that, the reserve that we had in this fund too. So, you know, there's been some hard decisions made on these, and we obviously could not grant, LTAC couldn't grant everything out. So these are the numbers that they agreed to. Okay, the Mount Vernon Parks and Enrichment special events, they awarded $13,000 for the 4th of July fireworks show. The Mount Vernon Chamber of Commerce, $115,000. That's for operations of $85,000 and marketing of $30,000. Their request was $5,000 less than it was last year. The Lincoln Theater Foundation, $21,500 for the Lincoln Theater promotion and COVID-19 related safety updates. They're planning on including some lobby redesign and additional restrooms. So LTAC recommended the full funding for that. The Mount Vernon Downtown Association, they had like 6 requests that came in. Last year, they were awarded $14,700, and the LTAC decided to award them the same amount this year. Their full request was just under $30,000, and they had some other requests in there for self-guided walking tours of downtown and self-guided art walk downtown, printed materials. And some of that the LTAC decided that funding was going to the Art Commission for the same thing, and just, again, some of those cuts that needed to be made. So again, they received the $14,700, which is the same as last year. Celtic Arts Highland Games requested $5,000, and their LTAC's recommendation is, again, the full funding for that. The Mount Vernon Farmers Market, $3,500 to promote the outreach of special events at the market. McIntyre Hall requested $16,000 for marketing and promotion, and LTAC awarded them $12,000 of that. The Mount Vernon Arts Commission requested $10,000 for art sculpture and the walk brochure and plaques, and LTAC recommended $5,000 for that. Skagit County Fairgrounds requested $3,500 for the fairgrounds events and marketing and operation, and they fully funded that one. The Theater Arts Guild, or TAG, $1,500 for the community theater production and advertisement, as well as $1,500 to the Meta Performing Arts for PAN, the musical advertising and marketing. The Skagit Valley Chorale for $1,500 for the heralding Christmas advertising. Skagit River Salmon Festival, $2,500 for the festival marketing campaigns, and Shakespeare Northwest Association, $750 for the festival advertising and programs. Moving on to the Silver Arrow Bowman, $1,500 for tournament advertising, promotion, and directional signs. And Camp Corey, $2,000 for community and family events for 2021. And Skagit Artists requested $1,000 and received $1,000 for their Northwest Art Beat Studio Tour website and development and advertising and brochures. And then we had a new one this year, the Turnaround Artists, and this is for a country and bluegrass festival productions for their art, and their request. They did request $5,000 for the artists and marketing campaign, and LTAC recommended 50% of that funding, contingent on the event taking place within city limits. But that they're recommending $2,500 for that. And then LTAC also decided just to leave in there that $10,000 for contingency, just based off of if there's, some of these, if the funding is there and funding comes in, or if there's other things that come up, or that we could meet again and discuss using that $10,000 for any other events. And then lastly, for a capital request, the Mount Vernon Parks capital item had in there $40,000 for the Little Mountain restrooms, which LTAC recommended with that. So in total, there was $269,950 in total recommended grants. And just to kind of give those final numbers. So what we estimated this year, our revenues came in way low, but also a lot of our awards didn't go out because a lot of the organizations' festivities and stuff did not happen. But we were estimated that we're going to have about $125,000 in estimated fund balance for the end of this year, and then estimating that revenues for next year are going to come in about $150,000, which leaves us a total resources of $275,715. And then less the 21 recommended funding is about just under $270,000, which leaves us an ending fund balance of $5,765. So I know this is very low ending fund balance. We do realize that, if there's still a lot of questions on what's going to happen, if any of all these events are going to happen or not next year. Let's just say they all do and our revenues come in or don't come in as well. Some of those city things that we probably would hold off on those to make this fun. But anyway, this is the recommendation from the LTAC. This is included in the budget as you see it here. And if there's any questions that you guys may have for me.
Hey, Doug, if you could, again, where's the Camp Quarry?
Camp Quarry is, okay, you guys correct me here. It's on off Highway 9, I believe.
Old Camp Brotherhood, Gary.
By Lake McMurray, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I just never heard it called that. So, Yep, got it. Thank you.
Don't ask me locations around here yet. I'm learning though. I'm learning.
Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it true that most of these funds are expensed out? In other words, whoever the organization is, they submit the billing and then they're reimbursed for invoices.
That's correct.
We don't just write a blank check and give it to them. They have to actually spend the money before they receive it.
Yes, and there's a lot of reporting that has to happen too for them. They have to give a report on their organization or what they did. They have to attach the actual receipts to make up for it, and we don't provide the funds to them until all of that stuff is provided.
Right, and this is as we call it, LPAC. It's a tax on hotel rooms with the express purpose of promoting tourism in Mount Vernon. So it's not like this is any other fund where we have to have a certain amount in fund balance. This is money that was raised through the hotel and lodging tax specifically to go back into the community to draw more tourism in and help our business community. So I'm not as concerned with the fund balance as I would with any other account that we had.
Okay.
It's a pretty aggressive funding strategy to take us down to $5,000, and assuming the similar income next year, that would leave us about half as much to give out next year. I guess people just need to realize that it's going to be a lot harder to give out these funds next year, and there's a couple of big ticket items that we usually like to give out, and so it's going to be hard for the small groups to compete, I would think. On the other hand, right, there's also a new tourism promotion authority coming in. It won't allocate money to the same groups, but it will help with tourism promotion. So we have some new tools coming in. Might offset some of that.
Yeah, just to speak to a little bit on that, the group really felt that yes, we were spending down the fund balance when we kind of like to carry a little bit forward for larger projects. However, if we're able to come back and we're able to have tourism and we're able to free around, we'd rather heavily invest so that we can get return, so that in 2021 there are more stays at some point during the year, so that it does replenish that fund in 2022. So that was a little bit of some of the discussion as well.
Well, I think that by allocating this money, if they're able to use it and bring tourism in, it's going to help all of our small businesses. It'll help hotel, motel, and it will increase the revenues, but it'll also solidify a solid base for our business community.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's going to make it harder the following year.
Well, we hope not. We hope that it'll generate a lot more income in 2021.
Perhaps. I think the good thing that I look at this list is I know that there's other organizations out there that help fund some of these types of programs too. So there's other opportunities for these really great organizations and causes to get money from a different source too. So that does give me a little bit of solace, I guess, if that's the right word. But
okay, any other questions around hotel motel? Okay, Doug?
Okay, so for that's all I have for tonight, unless there's any specific questions anybody has on the budget. Again, just wanted to, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, were you looking at me? I can't tell you're looking at.
Okay, I'm sorry. And then next week, we do have the public hearing on the revenues. And then prior to that, it's also giving a finance update where I'll be talking about actual revenues for this year. We still have not received, I should be getting any day here now, the revenues from the state for this month. So I'll be able to give a full report on where we're standing for 2020 at next week also. But with that, unless there's any other questions that anybody has that they'd like to discuss.
Yeah, we felt that we've been kind of presenting, and so kind of a free-for-all. So if you have your book and you've got any sticky notes, this is like perfect time.
I think we have a pretty lean budget. Sorry, Mark, didn't mean to step on your toes. I think we have a pretty lean budget. I don't know that there's a lot of areas to finesse, in my opinion, but go for it, Mark.
No, I was just going to say, Doug and I went through my sticky notes earlier today, so I won't bore everybody with my sticky notes.
Do you need more?
But very good questions.
I haven't got to the back of the book yet, Mary. I may need to come borrow some.
I only gave him 2 sticky notes in his book.
I'm proud of you.
That was 2 packages.
No.
It is a pretty straightforward document, I have to say. So, okay. Any questions then? Not that I want to stay on any longer, so I'm okay. Okay, so as of course, I think what we'll do then between now and next week is Doug and I, or a combination, or one of us, will reach out to each of you individually just to go over any questions that you may have that have come up, and make sure that you're real comfortable with the information that's been presented. So, okay, great. Item D is for the good of the order. I don't have anything in specifically. We did not have an elected officials briefing today because we were in the other meeting. So, but I will forward you the IAP that came out. Okay. With that, we've completed our agenda items. There is no executive session planned, and we send our good wishes to Kevin at home with little kids. So, getting some rest tonight. All right, so with that, then we'll be adjourned at 6:59. Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
everybody.